So now the United States is at war and on two different fronts in the Pacific theater against the Japanese, and then what do we do about our European theater? We don't have troops out there. We've got to do something. And so American military commanders discuss matters with the British. And it's deemed that while Japan directly attacked us at Pearl Harbor, the bigger worldwide threat is actually Germany. So the United States, while not neglecting Japan, we begin to focus a little bit more attention on things over towards Europe, while otherwise enacting a level of containment that will become larger in the Pacific theater. So, several different things happened to contain Germany. Yeah, they attacked us, and while we're preparing for various different campaigns in Northern Africa and in Italy, we begin movement in the Pacific so as to contain the Japanese until we can further strengthen our forces out there, i.e., build more ships, more airplanes, more aircraft carriers, and send more troops after they've gotten trained. Okay, so hold that thought. Okay, in the summer of 1942, the United States begins largely containing or confronting Japanese forces in the South Pacific and the Central Pacific so as to establish some basis of control, if not total control, but if anything else, a sense of containment of the Japanese military beginning near the Philippines, near modern day Papua New Guinea, and of course in the Central Pacific near Hawaii itself. So, Guadalcanal was a major victory for United States forces against Japanese, suffering mass casualties in the South Pacific so as to help gain control. Um, the Battle of the Coral Sea took place just northeast of Australia. Yeah, the Australians are involved in the war now. A long several month campaign to oust various different Japanese forces from the near coast of Australia. And then another key island in the middle of the Pacific, Midway Island, named because it's between Hawaii and mainland Asia near Japan. Midway Island would be a massive staging point for American forces. If the United States can contain and control victory and contain Midway, then that would be a massive staging area for future attacks on the Japanese mainland. Hold that thought. So the United States begins a process to where you have two different commanders, one in the southeastern Pacific under the command of General Douglas MacArthur, and one in the central Pacific under Admiral Chester Nimitz, to where they would eventually kind of meet and then begin a strategy making their way towards Tokyo. Otherwise, though, the United States begins a bombing campaign of Tokyo in 1942 to send a message. We're going to bomb various different Tokyo installations and we're going to be a force. You really caught us with our pants down at Pearl Harbor. We're going to do something about it now. We're beginning. So, the idea was Nimitz's force from the Central Pacific could meet MacArthur's force from the South Pacific and then eventually make their way in kind of a stair-step progression towards Tokyo. That's called island hopping. You're going to go from one island to another island north, eventually taking control, seizing control, setting up military installations, and then taking Tokyo eventually. That was the theory. Otherwise, though, going on in Europe, the United States realized that we couldn't directly invade Germany. We may have to do some liberation beforehand, but before we can really set up a large invasion force, Germany is a large threat in North Africa. Algeria, Libya, Egypt, Tunisia, countries around there. The United States recognized that the Suez Canal, which linked the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea and therefore the Indian Ocean, became a massive strategy force. If the United States were able to contain the Nazis in northern Africa, they would not just be able to protect the Suez Canal and therefore keep the Nazis from obtaining further access into the Indian Ocean, which would expand their opportunity, they would also be able to hop up to Italy and potentially knock Italy out of the way. And that begins to happen. The United States recognized that the Suez Canal was a major, major target. So if we control that, the better. And we gain a priority of driving the Germans out of North Africa. As a matter of fact, the United States and other Allied forces encounter some of the Nazi army's most notorious military leaders, General Rommel, for example, and the United States eventually, with the help of British forces and otherwise, drive German forces completely out of North Africa by May of 1943. Immediately, the Soviets understand, hey, we had our peace treaty violated by the Germans when they tried to attack us at Stalingrad. We now want the United States to attack from the west. That way we can attack from the east. So while the Soviets are maintaining their eastern front against the Germans, they want America to control that. However, the United States, instead of going in and invading France in 1943, they decide that they're going to start by taking out Italy. So in 1943, the United States invades Sicily, fighting a large German force, eventually making their way up the boot in Italy, if you will, encountering a larger German force south of Rome. And eventually, by the summer of 1944, Allied forces overcome German forces in Italy to where by June 1944, Allied forces sack Rome and therefore knocks Italy from being an Axis power. Soon thereafter, a new government is established in Italy that switches sides. And Italy denounces their Axis partnership and they immediately join the cause for the Allies. Okay, so Italy is now out of the way, and Italy can now be a staging point for various different Allied forces and otherwise. Otherwise, though, North Africa, Suez Canal, those are big priorities, and now Italy is out of the way. Set point.